Hello everybody. Okay, thank you so much first of all for waiting for so long. I know that I promised a fourth video for the fourth book. Well, I guess it's not the fourth video, it's like the ninth video maybe. But I did finish the fourth book of the series of The Wicked Years by Gregory Maguire. And so I wanted to kick off this first video talking about the fourth book, Out of Oz, the story of the daughter of the son of a witch, Lear. Her name is Rain. And I just wanted to go over this video, but first of all, again, thank you so much for being so patient. I have finished this book quite a while ago, and so I've actually forgotten more than I remembered. I had to kind of do a new outline and review it again. But I am in the process of moving, a lot of life changes. I'm going to be in Oregon next week, actually. And so I don't have a desk. I don't have my computer set up with me. I don't have a video. I'm doing this on my phone right now, as you can see. So things are a little up in the air, but I did want to get this video out, get it out of my head so that I can actually start reading the next books as I'm doing the road trip, moving my life to another state. So with that said, I want to get started. The book does start actually, funny enough, opening up with the life of Dorothy after she's returned to Kansas after her adventures in Oz after killing Elphaba and leaving in the hot air balloon with the wizard, presumably. So with that said, where it picks up is Aunt Em and Uncle Henry, I think is his name. They are a little concerned about their wonderful little niece that they're trying to raise. She's a little funny in the head now after everything that happened during the tornado. Maybe she's a little damaged, a little fuddy-duddy. And so they kind of think that maybe taking her on a vacation, getting her out of Kansas, taking her to San Francisco to see the ocean, got to get that ocean breeze, to help heal her, that kind of a thing. So this is the early 1900s. They're taking a cross-country trek, so it's not like it is nowadays. They're basically uprooting their life and, with the intention of going out there and maybe possibly staying, maybe not coming back, or maybe leaving her and going back by themselves to retire and get old on the farm. Who knows? But they are on their way to San Francisco, and the goal here is to focus on fixing or setting up for success Dorothy in her new life post-Oz, because that seems to be all she can talk about, and it's really driving them crazy. And they're actually treating her like she's sick when she continues to keep bringing Oz up. And she's like, they have these wonderful flowers in Oz, and there was this food that I was trying. You should have tried it. I don't think they have an ocean in Oz. And she was just going on and on and on, and they were just so tired of hearing it, because to them it's just a fantasy that she lived while she was having her life flash before her eyes while she was flying in a house during a tornado. So with that said, they do get to San Francisco. They're staying at a hotel, and she describes the hotel as being fancy. She's never been in a place like that. They're not on the first floor, all these tall buildings, and this building had an elevator, and Aunt Em said, don't you get in that elevator, because she didn't trust this new technology. She didn't think it was safe. So they're just taking the stairs no matter where they go. And the goal here is that they want to see the ocean. Dorothy's excited to see the ocean. She's from Kansas. She has never seen the ocean. And what do we know about the universe of Oz, at least in Gregory Maguire's? There is no sea, there is no ocean in Oz. So Dorothy's kind of excited to see an ocean, and she's like pondering, do they have an ocean in Oz? Everybody thinks it's a myth, but I wonder if you go far enough. And anyhow, she does try to see the ocean. It's covered in fog. It's San Francisco, after all. And so what she's thinking is that she wants to, one morning, go up to the roof of the building to see the sunrise over the ocean, to get her first clear view of the vastness of this water. And she also knows that Auntie Em is asleep. So she's going to do what she was told not to. She's going to get in that elevator because she knows that Auntie Em is just being extra cautious for no reason. So anyway, she gets in the elevator with Toto, and she's going up, and it's exciting. She's got the jitters. She's trying to stay calm, and she's excited about getting up to the top. Well, it's 1906, and what do we know happened in 1906 in San Francisco? You're right. This morning that she is in the elevator she was warned never to get into, there's an earthquake. And this is the big earthquake, the one that ends all earthquakes. So, rumble, 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 all of a sudden, we're going to wake up, and we're like we were just in a car accident in this elevator, and wake up in Oz. Toto runs off. I don't think that Toto ever actually comes back throughout the remainder of the story. Maybe they mention him. But here she is, Dorothy, once again waking up in Oz. And I would presume as the reader that we're assuming she died in this elevator contraption during the 1906 earthquake, but that's us reading between the lines. So the story actually takes over from there. We go to Glinda. Glinda is at her lakeside mansion retirement vacation home called Muckbeggar Hall. And it's in Munchkinland. It's on the shores of the Restwater Lake. So there's only two lakes. There's Kellswater, which is the bad water, and Restwater, which is the good water. So it's on the shores of Restwater Lake. It's this mansion. She's got her staff. Think Downton Abbey. You know, she's the lady. She's got her maids and her butlers and all of her footmen. She's at this house, but she's not there without a purpose. The reason she's at the house is because she needs to plant herself on her property to prevent it from being requisitioned by the military, I think 28 days later, for the purposes of using it as a launching point or a staging point or a barracks for the military during the Civil War. Of course, she's got the military parked in her yard, basically, and she's in the house. Like, well, you can't invade the house if I'm here because of propriety purposes. You know, they're still, trying to be proper, but they are in the middle of Civil War. So the leader of this regiment that is parked on her lawn is none other than Commander Cherrystone. Yes, the same Cherrystone that was with Lear when he was in the military, the same Cherrystone that talked to Shell when he was going down in South Stair with Lear, same Cherrystone that went to Kiamo Ko. Yes, so he's been a constant throughout the story, and here he is once again in the fourth book, and he wants Glinda to understand that she's going to eventually give him the house, but he's trying to be polite, but over time, he's taking the house section by section and little by little nudging her into her own private quarters. And so with that said, he's also getting rid of her staff, and she has a little argument with him, and they come to a mutual agreement that she can have a bare bones staff. So she's like, well, I've got to have a cook. I don't know how to cook. I've got to have a butler. I've got to have my lady's maid and chambermaid. And so she's got the staff. She's got all the, I forget their names, but she's got the butler, I think a cook, the older lady, which has served her entire life, and this little girl that is kind of a dum-dum, but, she's a ragamuffin, but Commander Cherrystone agreed to let her stay. So she's got her staff that she's allowed to keep. The rest of them are sent off. There's some politics here over time. The cook gets set free, and then they got to figure out how to cook. And there's some banter back and forth between Cherrystone and Lady Glinda. He's like, well, if they come up with like a gamble, like I'll agree to this if you agree to that. And part of her thing is that she had to learn how to cook, and he had to come up with his side of the arrangement. If she could learn how to, I forget what it was, but part of the arrangement was that she would allow him to let him teach Rain, the little girl, how to read, because she didn't know how to. She had never learned that. And it's not a pedo thing. It's not anything weird. It seems innocent enough. He is just on deployment. He misses his own daughter, and he wants to kind of use Rain as a surrogate so that he can have that father-daughter time and teach her how to read. So this is genuine. But Glinda's a little skeptical about it because she doesn't know what his angle is. This is a little weird. But she ultimately agrees to it because she can use it to her advantage to get Rain to spy on him. Once she can read, she can start telling Glinda what she sees on the papers. Does she see maps? What is she, what can she find that she can feed to Glinda to give her more information about what's happening? So as time progresses, she does lose that bet, and he does start teaching Rain how to read. And we're getting now to the point where she's constantly asking Rain to do little things. Rain is like sneaking. Rain has full reign of the house, and she knows all the ways to sneak in and out of rooms. She's almost invisible. And so she does report back to Glinda what's going on in here or there. At one point, she's describing what she says are upside-down houses. They're shaped funny. And so Glinda's like, draw it for me. So she gets her piece of paper. She draws these little things. Like she said, they look like upside-down houses. And Glinda comes to the realization they are boats. Rain has never seen a boat before. So Glinda's like, I wonder what they're doing with boats. I mean, obviously we're on the side of a lake, but what are the boats for? And they're really, really big. There's also a rumor going around that there's, people are hearing animal noises, but they're thinking maybe dragons. And so that's not a mystery. That's the rumor, that there are dragons, and dragons are not a thing that aren't normal in Oz now, but they don't fly. They must be baby dragons because Trism and Lear had killed all the dragons at the end of Son of a Witch. So this is telling us that dragons are back, and Commander Cherrystone needs boats with dragons. What is he going to do with them? So that's kind of the goal, is they're trying to figure out what's going on here. And at this point, we're now reintroduced also to the Clock of the Time Dragon crew. They are in the vicinity of this Restwater area. They are close to the house. So so this would be Mr. Boss, the dwarf. This would be Burr, the Cowardly Lion, and this would be Eleonora, who was revealed at the end of A Lion Among Men to be Nor, none other than the sister of Lear, the daughter of Fiyero. So this is the Clock of the Time Dragon. The boys that were with them were released. He said, the clock is slowing down. It doesn't seem to be working right. Looks like it's kind of retiring itself. So he sends all of his little helpers, the boys, back to their families to live their lives. And so it's just these three with the clock, and they're trying to keep it safe, but he's got the Grimmery with him, and meaning Mr. Boss the dwarf. So he imposes himself upon Glinda one day while she's walking around the grounds. This is while she's still able to, anyway. And he has a little, they have a little banter back and forth, but he basically says, like, you gave me the book when your turn was over because you needed to get rid of it, and it was my turn. Well, now my turn is over, and I have to hand it over to you. It's not safe to stay with us. And she's like, well, I guess I don't have a choice. I don't want it either, but one of us has got to keep it. I guess I'll figure it out. So she takes the book, and she brings it into her study, but she charms it so that it will not appear to be the Grimmery, but instead look like a normal, everyday, average book. And the irony here, it's a cute little nod by Gregory Maguire. It gets the title Gone with the Wind right down the brim. She doesn't know what that is, but to us, the reader, that's a beautiful little touch there. I mean, it's just telling us, like, I'm thinking tornadoes and houses and falling on witches, and I'm not thinking of Scarlet. No, I'm thinking of The Wizard of Oz, but Gone with the Wind. It's an ironic statement. So she masks the book and hides it up on the bookshelf so that nobody knows where it is except for her. But Rain is starting to read, and she's getting excited, so she wants more books, and Glinda's like, okay, we'll go pick a book. She goes, ooh, I want the glittery one. And she immediately goes to the Grimmery, and Glinda's like, wait a minute, you know what that is? How do you, wait a minute. Now, this is where we as the reader are starting to come to terms with the understanding that maybe Galinda does know who Rain is or presumes it. We know, or we think we know, that this little girl must be, because her name is Rain, and we all know that Rain is the daughter of Lear through our studies. I mean, I kind of spoiled that in all my videos. I guess if you're reading these for the first time, you wouldn't know that Rain was the daughter, but we knew going into this, if you had any understanding that Rain was the daughter, that this is Rain, but she's not green. And that's the funny thing. How did she get not green? Maybe this isn't the daughter. And so you're starting to question all these things in your head, but then Glinda's looking at her going, wait a minute, you know the Grimmery. And now you're starting to wonder, her reaction was a little understated. Maybe she knew all along that this was Rain. And now she's curious, can she read the Grimmery? Because Glinda can't read the Grimmery. She could barely make out certain things. So she's like, how interesting. So they start testing it, and they open it up to one page. It only lets them go to one page. And she goes, ooh, I like this one, Rain. And it's To Call Winter Upon Water. And Glinda's like, interesting. You can read this? Like, she can make out little things, but Rain says she can. She's like, I don't know. It kind of just makes sense to me. I know the letters. So they start studying it a little bit, and then they put the book back and they hide it. We'll come back to that. So as we start progressing through the story, things are starting to escalate a little bit. Glinda has decided to capitalize on the fact that the dwarf is there with the Clock of the Time Dragon. And so she wants to kind of do something for the soldiers to kind of, like, I don't know, suss out a little bit of information, or to kind of, like, mess with Commander Cherrystone, get under his skin. So she makes an arrangement to have the Clock of the Time Dragon do a presentation, do a little show, for old time's sake. Commander Cherrystone agrees to it. He thinks it'll be good for the morale, knowing that, come dawn or, soon, they'll be pulling the trigger on whatever the plan is. And so Clock the Time Dragon does what it does best. It comes out and it predicts what's going to happen in the future, but does it in a really kind of sarcastic and sardonic way that it shows this like vulgar and fiery end. And Commander Cherrystone does not appreciate how it ends, because in the beginning, it basically told the story of what he was planning on doing. Taking boats out onto the water and then having them die in a fiery crash in the middle of the lake is just he's pissed, and he's kind of blaming Glinda, thinking that she set that up. What does she know? Does she know too much? And so that kind of brings things to a turning point in the chapter where he's isolating her just in her quarters. She's got her butler with him. The butler actually got pushed out of a window, I think. I forget the details of how it happened because it has been a minute since I've read the book. But Glinda, I mean, obviously she wants to save him. She does care about her staff, but she capitalizes on the moment to have Rain hide outside of the window. And then Glinda obviously screams, you know, come in here, help, help, help. And then waits until they come in to assist her so that Rain can escape with the book out to the, you know, out of the room where they were basically imprisoned. And she had asked the Clock of the Time Dragon crew to take the little girl and the book, and obviously Mr. Boss is like, no, I just gave you the book, don't give it back to me. And so, but she's like, you know, the book needed me for a moment, but it's coming back with you, but not to you, to the girl. And the girl needs to get out of here, she's not safe. Burr, the Cowardly Lion, actually decides, you know, I kind of owe it to Elphaba, why don't I take the child? Because she obviously tells them who it is. Well, they think they know who it is. I think actually she might have divulged that information, but regardless of the details of it, Burr does act not necessarily because he thinks he should, but because he feels like he's obliged to for the goodness that Galinda offered to him, maybe at his past trials when he was put on trial when he was at the Emerald City. Maybe that's it. But regardless, so the Clock of the Time Dragon crew leaves with the little girl, and then they move on in the story. We are to learn that Glinda actually gets, you know, ends up going to South Stair, to the prison later on. But that's pretty much the end of her story until the end of the conclusion of the book. With that said, there's some, you know, some interactions. They're trying to escape to get out of Munchkinland, and they're actually going towards Quadling Country because they can't go to the Gillikin country. They can't go to Vinkus. They're already in Munchkinland, but they need to get out because it's at war. So Quadling Country is the next destination. It's presumed during this time, so just make a mental note, this is when they lost the Grimoire during part of this revolt period. But it's never specifically stated. He just kind of stops talking about it in the story. And then when it comes up later, you're like, oh wait, where's the book been this whole time? So they do go into Quadling Country, and this is one of the best parts of the book, I think, for me, at least that aha moment, is he starts to mention that the Quadlings will attack anybody on the road going into Quadling Country because of the history of the Emerald City coming in and invading their lands to steal their rubies. And so it's presumed that the crew of the Clock of the Time Dragon will be attacked, except they point out that the little girl is kind of part Quadling. And so that I think that's where, so Glinda must have told them her lineage. She just doesn't know it yet. But that was that moment in my head. I'm like, wait a minute, she is part Quadling. But not just that, she's a little bit of everything. This little girl not only has the power of Elphaba and the Grimoire at her fingertips, this natural-born talent, but she's also a little bit of all of the peoples of Oz genetically united. She is Munchkinlander, but she's of the tall variety, which means that they were interbred with people from the capital, presumably the Gillikins. She's got Quadling in her, Vinkus in her from Fiyero as her grandfather, but also from her father, Lear, and then also Quadling through Candle, her mother. So she's got all of the peoples of Oz genetically within her, and the Quadlings recognize her, and they put her out in front of the band as she's leading the crew down the road, and the Quadlings don't mess with them. They're a little hesitant, they stand off, but over time they learn to appreciate and welcome this crew, because this little girl is also one of them. She is Quadling. She's part Quadling. So from this part of the story, we move into the next kind of, I'll say the next plot arc, and that is the Chancel of the Ladyfish, where so now this is a point in the story where now we're not realizing that we've lost the Grimmery, but we're coming to terms with a reunion that needs to happen. So we meet Maluma. Maluma is what they call the Ivory Tigress, the white tiger princess that we met in A Lion Among Men, that ended up seducing Burr. He had sex with her. It was brutal, aggressive sex, and she said that he raped her. And then all of the tiger tribe chased him out. And she kind of enjoyed that. The whole purpose behind it was that she wanted her virginity taken so that she was no longer pure and could no longer qualify as the queen, because she didn't want that responsibility. She wanted to be free. And so we kind of hated her because of what she did to Burr, but at the same time, he got some action and he kind of regretted it. There's a little bit of guilt there. So she's reintroduced to the story, and she provides some feedback to Burr about what happened after he left, what's going on with the animals, what's going on with the capital, what's going on with the new Emperor Shell, brother of Elphaba and Nessa Rose. And he's pious. And we kind of already knew that through A Lion Among Men, but she's basically reporting, the ongoings, keeping them up to date. And she kind of joins the party for a little bit. They do get to this Chancel of the Ladyfish, which are some ruins from some ancient civilization that must have predated the Emerald City or Oz. Maybe even the Ozma, emperor lineage, who knows. But in this book, he kind of does touch on a little bit of the ancient lore of what might have happened in the past, the founding of Oz and such. We got a little bit of that in past books, but he's now adding another element to this. So instead of the mythology, we're now getting the ruins, and Rain is kind of getting introduced to this ancient history and kind of, this understanding of a greater world around her that's existed far before her, and she's curious. But that brings us to the major point of this part of the story, and that is the reunion of Rain to be introduced to her father and her mother. So she meets Lear and Candle face to face for the first time since being left with Glinda. And she doesn't remember that. She was such a little girl. But we're now informed through the story that Glinda did know that this was Lear's child, or she presumed as much. The child was not green when she received her. We'll learn more about that later. But he had brought the child to Glinda, knowing that Glinda was a friend of Elphaba's once upon a time, and he begged her to take the child in and care for her because he was being hunted by the Emerald City, because they wanted somebody to read the Grimmery. So with that said, she didn't have the Grimmery at the time because it was the Clock of the Time Dragon. It had its own journey. So this is kind of like serendipitous that the Clock of the Time Dragon brought the Grimmery, and Lear brought the little green girl, but she's not green, and present them to Glinda, and Glinda is the parent that needs to make this happen because Elphaba's not here to do it. And so she kind of feels obliged. That's also why this little girl was not educated. She was treated like she was kind of like a lower class person, because if she had been shown any kind of favor, then Glinda's secret would have been out. She knows. And also she could not afford to have anybody know that this was Elphaba's granddaughter, let alone the child of Lear, who is also still on the run. So with that said, this is not the only reunion that we have. We also have Lear finally getting that moment where he gets to be face to face with his sister, Eleonora. He spent all of Son of a Witch looking for his sister to save her or to make sure she was okay, but he spent that entire narrative on the search for his sister, and here he is finally getting to see her face to face. But she's lived such a life that it was not a warm homecoming for them, because she's lived through so much trauma, and she had no clue what he went through to try to find her. She just kind of assumed that he abandoned them like the weak child he was when she knew them. They weren't the same people that they were when they were kids. So it was kind of bittersweet, but they do start to warm up to each other and kind of share some stories about what happened. And also with Rain didn't have a very warm reception to her parents either. She actually kind of went nonverbal. She had adopted this swamp otter named... Tay. And Tay kind of like curled up around her and like got protective. And so it was just her and Tay, and Lear's like, okay, if you don't want to, that's okay. And Candle, it kind of took it hard. This is her baby. She was forced to abandon. She's never even seen her since the day she was born. She abandoned her in that farm and left her for Lear. So there's a little bit of guilt there, and that kind of eats away at her throughout the rest of the story moving forward. Candle's kind of a secondary character. He doesn't do a lot of like character development for her. But Rain doesn't accept them as her parents right away because she's already kind of decided that Glinda was kind of the mother figure for her, and that at this point Burr was the father figure because he had vowed to protect her. And even then, she kind of cowers under him, even when presented to Lear. So I'll go ahead and end this video here. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and start the next video here in a couple seconds for me, but, you know, feel free to, you know, take some time if you want to. Thank you so much. Throw a like, comment, let me know if I skipped anything or if you're curious about something mentioned here. I'm going to go ahead and start the next video. There's, I think, 3 videos I'll get through. But we'll go ahead and go through this. There's not a lot to talk about as far as thematic elements that are any different than the other books. So I'm just kind of going over the plot and kind of dissecting it a little bit analytically. So thank you so much for watching. And again, thank you for your patience. I know it's been a while for me to come out with this video. I'll see you in a couple seconds, but go ahead and like, share, whatever you want. Thank you.